The sky is a vast open frontier. It represents freedom, progress, and the incredible human achievement of flight. We board airplanes with an unspoken trust. We place our faith in the pilots, the engineers, and the complex systems that guide these metal birds through the clouds. We expect to arrive. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when a plane simply vanishes from the sky? The idea is terrifying because it defies explanation. It punches a hole in our understanding of the world. A machine weighing hundreds of tons doesn't just disappear. It leaves a trace, wreckage, answers. Yet sometimes it doesn't. This is the core of our fascination and our fear. The mystery of a missing plane is a story without an ending. It is a puzzle with most of its pieces scattered to the winds or sunk beneath miles of ocean. For the families of those on board, it is an unimaginable, unending grief. There is no closure, only a persistent, gnawing question mark. For the rest of the world, these stories become modern legends, cautionary tales that remind us of the immense power of nature and the occasional, shocking fragility of our own creations. Our countdown begins on March 16, 1962. A Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation, chartered by the United States military, prepared for a long journey across the Pacific. Designated as Flying Tiger Line Flight 739, the plane was carrying 93 U.S. Army soldiers and 3 South Vietnamese personnel. They were headed for South Vietnam, part of the early escalating American involvement in the region. With a crew of 11, a total of 107 souls were on board. The flight took off from Travis Air Force Base in California. It made several refueling stops. The final leg was from Guam to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. It was on this stretch, over the vast and empty expanse of the Philippine Sea, that the Tiger vanished. The flight departed Guam without any reported issues. The weather was clear, the sky calm. The pilots maintained routine radio contact. Then, about 80 minutes after takeoff, silence. Flight 739 sent no distress signal. It issued no warning of trouble. It simply stopped communicating and disappeared from radar. An enormous search and rescue operation was immediately launched, one of the largest in the history of the Pacific at the time. Over 8 days, more than 1,300 people, 48 aircraft, and 8 surface vessels scoured an incredible 200,000 square miles of ocean. They found nothing, not a single piece of debris, not a life raft, not an oil slick. The only tangible clue came from the crew of a civilian oil tanker, the SS TL Lenzen. The sailors reported seeing a bright explosion in the sky near the plane's expected position and time. Next on our list is a mystery that feels like it was ripped from the pages of a thriller novel. It involves a stolen plane, a shadowy past, and inexplicable disappearance. The date is May 25, 2003, 4 de Fevereiro Airport, Luanda, Angola. A Boeing 727, 223 sits on the tarmac. Registration N844AA. The plane was old and grounded for over a year, with millions in unpaid fees. Leased by a Miami-based company, recent history murky. That evening 2 men boarded, Ben Charles Padilla, John Michael Mutantu. Neither was certified to fly a 727. Padilla, a private pilot, not commercial. Mutantu, a mechanic. Under cover of dusk, the trijet began to taxi erratically. It did so without communicating with the control tower. Its lights were off. Its transponder was not transmitting. The 727 accelerated, lifted off, banked over the Atlantic heading southwest. It was never seen again. No distress call. A worldwide search began. FBI, CIA, U.S. authorities. Post 9/11, a missing jet set off major alarm bells. Terrorist plot? Insurance scam? Investigators hit dead end after dead end. The silent giant flew off into the sunset and disappeared from the world. No proof. We travel back to August 2, 1947 for a mystery that left behind a tantalizing and bizarre clue. The aircraft was a Lancastrian airliner named Stardust, operated by British South American Airways, BSAA. It was on a flight from Buenos Aires to Santiago, crossing the Andes. On board were 6 passengers and a crew of 5, including an experienced pilot, a veteran of World War II's Bomber Command. The flight proceeded normally for hours, and as it neared its destination, the crew made radio contact with the Santiago airport. As the Stardust was estimated to be just minutes from landing, the airport's radio operator received one final message from the plane. It was transmitted in Morse code. The message was clear, but its meaning was utterly baffling. It consisted of a single, cryptic word, STENDEC. The radio operator, confused, asked for clarification. The Stardust's operator repeated the strange word twice more before the transmission abruptly cut out. The plane was never heard from again. What did STENDEC mean? No list of aviation mysteries would be complete without a visit to the infamous Bermuda Triangle. Our fourth entry is the disappearance of Flight 19. December 5, 1945. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale. It was a routine training exercise designated Navigation Problem Number 1. The flight consisted of 14 men, led by Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor. Their mission: fly east, bombing runs at a place called Hens and Chickens Shoals, fly north for a time, then return to base. The first leg went according to plan, but about an hour and a half after takeoff, the control tower received a startling transmission from Lieutenant Taylor. He sounded confused, agitated. He reported his compasses were malfunctioning and that he was lost. He believed he was somewhere over the Florida Keys, far south of his actual position. In reality, flight data later showed he was east of the Florida coast, exactly where he should have been. But Taylor, a veteran pilot, was disoriented. Tragically, he convinced his flight of 4 other planes to follow his lead instead of trusting their own instruments. For the next 2 hours, radio operators on the ground listened helplessly. The pilots flew deeper into the Atlantic, growing more and more lost. Their transmissions became fainter, filled with static and growing panic. They discussed their dwindling fuel supplies. Taylor was heard handing over command to another pilot before his final, garbled message was picked up. Then, silence. The mystery at number 3 is one of the most famous in American history. A story of ambition, courage, and a final, heartbreaking silence. In 1937, Amelia Earhart was a global superstar. She was the most famous female pilot in the world, a symbol of adventure and female empowerment. For her final greatest challenge, she set out to become the first woman to circumnavigate the globe. Her aircraft was a state-of-the-art twin-engine Lockheed 10E Electra, specially modified with extra fuel tanks. Her only companion was the skilled but often overlooked navigator, Fred Noonan. After flying more than 22,000 miles, they reached Lae, New Guinea. Only one major leg remained, a grueling 2,556-mile flight over the open Pacific to Howland Island, a tiny, flat speck of land just 2 miles long and half a mile wide. Waiting for them at Howland was the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, tasked with providing radio and navigational support. On July 2, 1937, Earhart and Noonan took off from Lae, heavily laden with fuel, and flew into the vastness of the Pacific. For hours they maintained intermittent radio contact, their signals often weak and broken. As they neared Howland Island, the situation grew desperate. Earhart's radio transmissions, picked up by the Itasca, revealed that they were lost. She reported that she believed they were close but could not see the island.
"We must be on you but cannot see you. Gas is running low."
The world's most famous aviator had vanished. The second most mysterious case on our list is terrifying for a different reason. We know what happened to the plane, but the circumstances that led to the disaster are a chilling tale of human error and technological betrayal. August 14, 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522, a Boeing 737, took off from Larnaca, Cyprus, heading for Prague with a stop in Athens. On board were 115 passengers and a crew of 6. The flight climbed normally, but as it ascended it failed to make contact with air traffic control after being handed off. For over an hour the plane flew on autopilot, unresponsive to all calls. Concerned, the Hellenic Air Force scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets to intercept the silent airliner. What the fighter pilots saw was a scene from a horror movie. They pulled alongside the 737 and looked into the cockpit. The captain's seat was empty. The co-pilot was slumped over the controls, motionless. In the passenger cabin they saw oxygen masks dangling from the ceiling, but all the passengers appeared to be unconscious, frozen in their seats. The plane had become a ghost flight, cruising at 34,000 feet on autopilot, with everyone on board either incapacitated or deceased. It was a truly chilling and unprecedented sight. We have arrived at number 1, the most baffling, expensive, and technologically advanced aviation mystery of all time. On March 8, 2014, a state-of-the-art Boeing 777 operating as Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members. The flight began as uneventfully as any other. The plane climbed to its cruising altitude over the South China Sea. At 1:19 a.m., as the plane was about to pass from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace, the cockpit made its last radio call.
The voice, believed to be that of the co-pilot, said, "Good night, Malaysian 370.
2 minutes later, the plane's transponder, which communicates its identity and position to air traffic control, was switched off. The aircraft vanished from civilian radar screens. However, military radar tracked the plane for another hour. It showed the 777 making a sharp, deliberate turn back across the Malay Peninsula, flying over the country of Malaysia, and then heading out into the vast, empty southern Indian Ocean. It was flying in the opposite direction of its destination. After that, it flew beyond the range of military radar and disappeared again. The plane, and the 239 people on board, had effectively become a ghost. What followed was the most extensive and costly search in aviation history. An unprecedented international effort scoured millions of square miles of ocean, first in the South China Sea and then, after a shocking revelation, in the southern Indian Ocean.